welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And this week we return to our must-see horror, our top 100, should you see them or should you not, a list that we bought from Amazon.
Yes, because Amazon and random Amazon stores are the authority on, must-see horrors.
Yeah.
And this, I would say, we've done a lot of the must-see horror features, so I'd go and recommend checking them out. However, we've mentioned a couple of times on the episodes that you have the big hitters, case in point recently, I wouldn't say it's a big hitter, but Christine is on there. From the man himself, John Carpenter, Stephen King adaptation. Go and check out the episode if you haven't yet. However, there are some on there that you can definitely tell they spunked their load on stuff like Nightmare on Elm Street, Dawn of the Dead, all of the big hitters, and then they were kind of like, well, we can't just put another massive film on there. Yeah. We have to put something on there that's a bit like
they didn't go to they didn't go to the archives of the British Film Institute.
No.
They didn't go to Empire magazine, a little bit more of an institution in Britain, or even something like the Times or the Guardian or something like that. They didn't go to any of those ones to look at films. This was I feel like some lowly, maybe even intern who they went, we're going to make some random horror poster. We've made loads of these ones. We've made dating ones, ghost ones, whatever the fuck. Could you just throw together a horror one, do that, find a list of some of the best known. And he was like, all right, I know the main icons, and I know a couple of directors, so I'll just put those onto there. And then he was like, oh, I really liked Bird Box.
I like Bird Box. And I was in CEX on my lunch break.
I used to whack it to Death Race.
I used to whack it to Death Race 2000. David Carradine rep.
Yeah.
But this is, I actually think, because I believe this is a first time viewing for you.
It is indeed.
We've rambled a little bit, so we're covering Dead Snow from 2009. If you have clicked on the episode and not read what we're doing, I admire your faith in the podcast, and I would remind you to hit that subscribe button and leave us a lovely review. Bam, got it in early. Whilst they're still listening. But I actually watched this film maybe 15 years ago. It came out in 2009, and I'm pretty sure that I heard stuff about it. I heard it was this kind of over the top, gory, horror comedy that wears its arm on its, wears its influence on its sleeves, and it was kind of hitting around the time of what we've recently been getting back into. Shout out Motto if he's listening. COD zombies, zombies in World War II was kind of a thing. You had the more serious Outpost. I don't know if you ever watched that, which was about these rough and gruff British soldiers who.
That was quite a bit later, though, wasn't it? Outpost.
I don't think it was much later. I think it was around the same time as this, because you had that whole kind of Nazi zombies vibe coming about.
Yeah.
So I actually ended up watching this, and I remember large chunks of it. I think it does, for anybody who hasn't seen this film yet, we will be talking about.
Go away.
Go away. Be gone from us. I mean, you clicked an episode without reading the title. But it's pretty much just balls to the wall, pants down, sticking in horror. It's effectively follows a kind of slasher setup for the first half, and then goes into Evil Dead-ish. The second half.
you've got a bit more of your horror comedy, I think, into here. I think it mainly does go. It's still got that standard ingredients of basically a group of friends who go somewhere out that's somewhat deserted. Yeah, well, they have the weird odd person that comes along, and then you have this big event that then leads to kind of the bigger scenes, which with this film is somewhat it feels like it's waiting to get to that.
It's waiting to get to it because it's quite an interesting setup. We get the cold open. This woman kind of running through these woods at night, and then she gets taken off by something off screen. Yeah. Then we get a bunch of people on a little road trip. Through said mountains.
I mean, this is a Norwegian horror, is it?
I'm pretty sure it's Norwegian.
The director, Tommy Wirkola. Norway. So a Norway horror. And he himself, to be fair, he went, this did him good stead. This was a somewhat kind of smaller, independent, obviously, like horror film, and did him fairly good stead. He got him some Hollywood gigs and stuff like that he's still working on certain films to this day.
I didn't realise.
Yeah,
I know had a sequel.
Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, if you remember that one with Jeremy Renner, I believe.
I do remember that.
What Happened to Monday, which I think was like a Netflix kind of.
I remember that.
Violent Night with
I
Mr.
saw
David
that
Harbour.
Oh, Mr. David Harbour. That was an enjoyable
that
film.
one. Yeah, in Spermageddon.
I
don't know that one, but yeah.
No, a Norwegian adult computer animated musical comedy film. Interesting.
But he's so he's done a few actually
Amazing coin.
So he's done well off of this film. Obviously even it having a sequel, Dead Snow 2, Red versus Dead, which continued on, and he continued on as the writer and director for that. Even after he'd got a big Hollywood gig, he still came back to do the sequel.
For his roots.
So no, I haven't seen the sequel. Have you seen the sequel?
No. I think it is on Amazon Prime. This film's on Amazon Prime if you do want to go check it out. But it kind of it fits in with that like early kind of to mid 2000s like obnoxious teenagers. I didn't pick up really any of their names apart from a couple of them. So most of these people will be defined.
Martin was the
Roy,
main one,
which I thought were interesting. Roy was an interesting Norwegian name, I thought.
Yeah, I mean it plays very much up. I mean I don't know if this is showing off their kind of humour. But it has a very kind of immature kind of. The guys have this very like immature, like making almost like I don't know the most obvious of kind of jokes in their kind of way. They're very stupid. There's a lot of talk about like boobs, asses, breasts, and all that kind of stuff in the car. Especially I think it is Roy. He's the character who's mainly seen as like the more dirtier one. He's
the big lad, isn't it? The big lad, Elrond or whatever his name is. I believe he's a bit more chubbier. The one who does have sexual intercourse. He does a bit more, but I think Roy is the one that says a lot of like the jokes. He's the very he's the little bit of the clowny kind of like he's constantly making jokes about the girls in certain ways. It has that weird kind of fit. The one thing that threw me off was it has the setup like a teen horror, and this is what
where they talk like a teen when they look like 40-year-old men.
Well, that's the way in which it's a teen. It's inspired by Friday the 13th. So that's what they're doing.
They literally say that Friday the 13th in the film,
and that's what I wrote down. There's a scene where they're walking towards this cabin in the woods, and they're talking about two films that have very clear influences, and that's Friday the 13th and Evil Dead. Yeah. And one of them even does the classic thing of like, well, Evil Dead 2 is more a remake, but with more of a comedy into it. I'm surprised he didn't look at the camera and go, wink, 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 lads. But it effectively follows that, where they're in the cabin, they're having it, and then just this mysterious stranger like turns up, and he starts telling them about like how the area was important for like stopping trade between the English and the Russians during World War II. And it was kind of commanded by this guy called Colonel Herzog, and he kept the area basically under an iron fist. And then eventually, like towards the end of the war, they took like they hoarded people's wealth, and when they heard that the Russians were fucking kicking ass, they started to retreat into the mountains, and then the lads in town got everything together and just fucking killed them. And it's the Nazis. And we get that this kind of mysterious stranger is supposed to be a little bit like crazy Ralph-ish kind of character.
I mean, he's given them pretty sound advice though, because he's basically like, you're fucking idiots for being here,
you're fucking fools, for doing
that. Go out of here. So he's not even in the he's not so much of the he comes across quite like. You definitely wouldn't want to invite him into your house. If I saw him at the door, I'd be like, no.
What is he doing there?
There is that kind of odd, like, he's got an intensity to him.
He does.
He seems very ready to fight them at any point. I was almost expecting him to take his top off and go, who wants to fight? Who wants a bit of this kind of thing? it doesn't take long for them to be like, okay, you're getting a bit too...
You're getting a bit too intense now.
Like, you leave, be gone. And he's ready to go anyway, because he's like, I've drunk your beer, I've drunk your shit coffee, I'm out of here.
I smoked my old...
One thing that I did find really interesting, who is basically kind of the lead man in this film, which is Martin, a man of, I don't know, a fair stature.
A portly fellow.
A portly fellow.
A rosy
slightly balding kind of fellow. And yet, the first thing we get in the film when we see the girls in the car on the way there is like, well, Martin's the really hot one. Martin's mine. Martin's the really,
Martin's the one
he's the sexual beast. Even though, I would say that there is a lad of a blonde hair kind of who looks much better looking, and yet he seems to be the one that's like, no, we want the fat lad,
we want the big lad,
and the slightly portly balded lad, the skinny bloke who's weird, who I'm like fine. But the really good-looking guy, who, to be fair, I believe is waiting for the lass who died at the beginning.
His girlfriend, yes.
Because she was making her own way there. Why she fucking made her way through snowy mountains, and I'm just going to hike my way to this cabin makes perfect fucking sense. But yeah, apparently she's making her own way there. So he pretty soon goes out on his little way to search for her out there, kind of thing. But why this dude is getting passed over is not the good-looking guy, and the other one's like, Martin's the real fucking sexy one.
Look at that ugly
Even though
man.
Martin tries to literally suffocate her.
Yeah, he tries
as a joke. It was a joke. I put a pillow on your face until you nearly died.
It's a joke.
That's a
I'm
joke.
flirting. And then
I've just stabbed you. Hilarious. I'm gutting you like a fish.
And they all like look at the guy with the long hair and the chiseled jawline, the handsome one.
Yeah.
Like, look at this freak.
Fucking
look
disgusting.
At this ugly creature. Get away from
sick.
it. You make me sick with your beautiful eyes.
Literally like Jason Voorhees, like spit in his face, drown you in the ocean.
It's an interesting one. I mean, we are kind of speeding through the film because basically
this is your basic setup, really.
It's not a long film. I think it comes in. I think it's 88 minutes.
Yeah, something like that. It's not. It does. It goes fairly speedy. It's a fairly easy kind of watch.
But it plays in its. It plays in the film's. It plays into its hand because I feel like
it does play to it, and sometimes it even goes beyond what I maybe expected for them to be able to pull off within what felt like a fair. I think it's a $2 million film. Not a bad budget, for a small kind of one.
No.
And because of that, it has its ups and its downs, for certain things. But some of the things they're able to pull off later in the film is actually quite impressive. But we do get our first death around the scene we were just talking about.
And the first two deaths, kind of, I think the first one in particular was shot really quite coolly. But this gave me the impression that it was going to be a little bit lower budget than we hear because he doesn't, this mysterious stranger doesn't necessarily say, there's zombie Nazis in it, you need to fucking do one.
Yeah.
But he very much implies that it's a dangerous area. He says, about his girlfriend, like the terrain is the least of her concerns up there. And then for some reason he's like, whatever you do, you need to get off this mountain. You need to get away from it. I'm going to go just camp in the mountain. And then he gets, he's camping and he's cooking something, and he gets like disturbed. He goes out and he's got his torch and his shotgun. And I think this scene's quite cool where he's kind of like tracing through the snow and you can see the beam of the light and it settles on the distance on the kind of legs of somebody. You don't see the full kind of thing. And then, you get the quick run past and the throat slit.
Yeah.
And then when he runs back into the tent, you do see somebody rushing in, but it's still quite dark. And then you get like the silhouette of him being stabbed and the blood spraying everywhere. And I thought it's a really cool, like effective first kill. But that one and then
the gutting in the tent.
And the gutting in the tent.
You get like quite cool like shadow where it just speeds inside and
just guts him.
Gut.
And it made me think, obviously I knew this was a lower budget film. The first time I watched it, I didn't know kind of how it goes on. But I was thinking like, is this how they're going to be like covering it? Is it going to be a lot of like off camera, or is it going to be a lot of like silhouettes and shadows? So you don't necessarily have to show the gore. It's that like it's implied.
Yeah. But it goes beyond. It does build beyond that. We see. Well, there's not a great deal from there because we kind of see out in the next morning the extremely handsome man who has been going out looking for his comes across the empty tent the next morning.
Yeah.
And he comes, and we get to see like a nice shot of the gutted version of the man inside the tent, into the bloody tent, and he looks like he's going to throw up and kind of reacts of, I should go and tell people about this dude that's like literally been gutted on a tent that's not far from us.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when we're getting a bit more of that kind of build up, aren't we, of the zombies that are coming. Did I miss a death before that?
I skipped
the shagging in
the shagging. Elrond goes out to go and the outhouse.
The outhouse.
He goes out and I don't know if he does. He says he needs a wee, but he's sat down and he wipes his ass, which indicates to me that he might have done a poo. I don't know. But either way,
I think I think we can probably take that, which makes it better what comes afterwards with the lass, because it makes it even dirtier, and not in a sexy way.
No, she goes in and she makes love inside the outhouse.
I was literally like, not only just go to the outhouse, but one, I was like, why is this lass getting on this guy? I'm not against, everyone deserves love. Everyone deserves a bit of this, but the fact that we can say that he's batting above is insane.
He is swinging.
But the fact that this lass, not only that, but this lass seems literally like, what is the pheromones that this guy is putting off? Because this lass looks so ready to just come and pipe him, that I was almost certain this was some weird possession scene that she was controlled by something. You know what I mean? I thought they were taking the Evil Dead bit a bit more literally here, because I was like, she must have been bitten by the zombie or infested or infected, because that's my only literal thing I can think for why this lass is piping that lad.
I mean, I thought you were making a cheap plug about last week's episode, which was Possession 1981. Go check it out. And I was like, there's going to be a tentacle alien fucking somebody. But no, she just I think it's the aroma of feces and the coldness that drives her mad.
Yeah.
And she just goes out and she makes
Who doesn't want that aroma of feces of that newly laid shit?
Of that frozen feces.
In that pile of shit that must be below there.
Yeah. But then that's what happens to her. You know? Like, they basically like...
finish, and then he goes inside. He goes just inside. Leaves her in the outhouse.
You don't need a shit anymore. You've nutted. What more do you need? Now you need warmth.
But she's wondering where he is, as if he's meant to be coming back or something. Because she's literally like, "Is that you? Like, is that?"
Because I think that's where they find the coins, isn't it?
Yeah.
They find like the gold boxes. They rate it to being like 1942. This is Colonel Herzog's. And this is them finding the Necronomicon. This is very
basically
much
unleashing
things. I don't know if you noticed that one of the characters is wearing a Brain Dead t-shirt.
I did not know.
One of the characters is wearing a Brain Dead t-shirt, which does kind of come back a little bit later on in the film. And whilst they're looking for the coins, one of them slips one into Roy's pocket, which is a bit naughty. And because they're like, basically, we need to leave this for Sarah because it's her like place, and we need to see like what we're going to do about it. So I think she's like, well, we can have a fucking coin on the side. We can have that. And she gets, she's outside sat waiting for Elrond, whatever his name is, to come back and have round two, and she gets dragged down into the shitty outhouse.
Yeah, and we get to then, a little bit after they've gone back inside for a moment, we then get to see her dragging herself back out. And she seems to have been stabbed or hurt in some way, because she is also bleeding.
She's bleeding. They bit her.
She's covered in shit, including his shit that he just shit in that nice outhouse. A lovely little scene for her to get before she gets to her death.
She gets to her death where
she makes her way out and screams, and they hear that, don't they?
Well, they're listening to the music, and then the Dreadlock Girl, who will be known as Dreadlock Girl, going forward.
Hannah is her name.
Okay, and that will be forgotten very quickly.
But Dreadlock Girl.
Girl. She kind of like hears something and stops the music, and then they go outside. But as they're about to open the door,
sees her head.
No, she gets whomped off screen.
Oh, does it? That's not.
The scene with the head is really good, and the thing that I do quite like about this film, and I think plays into its hand again, is just how quickly it goes, because it they get up there, they have a little party, mysterious stranger turns up, and then mysterious stranger's dead. They find the coins. they have fuck in the outhouse, and then we get another death.
Yeah.
And then they're basically saying like, well, I've been out to the outhouse and she's not there. There's nobody around. They get the shotgun and they're like, Roy is basically like, oh, we're just going to shoot her out there, aren't we? That kind of thing. And that's when you get the really cool scene where you see her face in the window. And they're like, oh, it's her. And then the head gets pulled back and you're like, fucking hell, that's sinister. And things just ramp up,
I mean, one thing that happens throughout this entire film is that character of Roy, who I said was a bit of the clown kind of.
Yeah.
He just consistently makes really shit jokes all the time. Doesn't matter if someone's literally just died. He makes literally like inappropriate jokes about people or about just off the cuff kind of thing.
Just go.
Which it is oddly timed and. Not really funny.
No.
But that's kind of the point, I'm guessing, is the point he's meant to be.
Funny, maybe.
That he's not funny. He's trying to almost play on the fact that there's normally somebody who makes wisecracks, but he's not. He's like making wisecracks that are terrible, like bad, not even funny bad.
Yeah. But the film has a kind of like, it's got a very dry, at least I picked up it having quite a dry...
Yeah, it
humor.
does.
It's not very in your face funny.
Norway is a dry humour kind of place.
Yeah, they do like that. There was one scene that did actually make me cackle because I forgot about it, and we'll get to it when we get to it. But yeah, it kind of it's not one of those ones where you've got to be rib splitting, ripping your side. But it does have some moments to it. And effectively, what happens now is the zombies just swarm. Basically, they just swarm, start break into the house. I think one of them gets shot, and then you get another quick death, don't you?
Yes,
which is really cool.
I'm losing track of which death that. Which one's the next death?
Elrond's death.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah. That is cool
because you get the head,
proper ripping scene.
And it's and again, this I remember when I first watched it as well. I was like, oh fucking hell, that's class. They do the homage to Day of the Dead where the zombies break through and then they grab him
apart,
you think they're gonna pull him apart and then the fingers go into the eyes and you're like, oh,
his head is literally split in half.
It's just torn apart.
So it's
and
really
it looks great, man.
Yeah, they do still play on the Day of the Dead pull apart later on.
Yeah, they do that. But it's such an iconic scene,
Yeah, you've also got handsome dude outside still on the ski because he's starting to be hunted by them as they're coming outside because he's driving away because he not only does he get his throat slashed because while they're still in the house he gets the slash.
He falls into the cave first, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, he goes down.
Falls into the secret Nazi cave.
Yeah, because at some points it feels like he's almost more of the main.
I think
of
that's
dude we're following.
The kind of a little bit of a bait and switch to have a spoiler.
It feels like he's away from them, almost as if they're all going to die, but he's out hunting.
He's out information. That's what you're kind of thinking.
It feels like he's out there like that, but it's not quite as we expect.
No, but he finds he kind of falls through into this into this cave and he finds the Nazi flags and he finds all of the stuff. I think he finds an MG42 that he then hooks up to this thing, which is class, but he also finds his girlfriend's head, and effectively this is at the halfway point. I know we said that we'd probably speed through this, and for our listeners who expect a lot more philosophical debates around films.
Or just filler.
Or just random, talking about beating off and doing all sorts of stuff that we usually do. Tomfoolery, some would say. We're speeding through it because it's quite quickly paced.
It is,
and it doesn't really give you time to settle into it. I think the director, I'm just going to re-find his name, Toby Workler. I think he just kind of basically wants to get into it. I think he probably realised the budget he has, and the time he has, and just thought, you know what, let's get these trousers down.
Yeah, let's
go to town.
Let's use the money for the good bits.
Because he has the.
He's got some good use with some of the action and the set. The darker night scenes are actually quite well shot for what it is. generally, like for some of it, it does look like a lower budget film at times.
Yeah.
The wider shots, the daytime shots, the skiing shots.
Yeah.
I think in terms of quality, the cinematography is not amazing.
No, it's not.
I think it's quite low grade sci-fi channel kind of style
Definitely.
of look.
But then there's
the night scenes and some of the action scenes, I think, actually raise it a little bit more.
And there's some weird moments where you could very much tell, like, the influence on Evil Dead when they're shooting it. So I'm thinking kind of specifically about the zombie, the kind of really exaggerated zombie fight that he has that the handsome man has with that zombie, and it's like
Vergard.
There's a moment where like he's punching him, but the way in which they film it looks very much like it did in Evil Dead. There's like a certain like.
Oh yeah, definitely. The homage is very like the copying of a lot of American, a lot of American horror is like being copied here. This is very much like a foreign director who's very much inspired by Hollywood aesthetic.
But also
maybe
that
more
low
cultish,
budget,
lower budget. Yeah.
Like there's
it
a lot
all
of,
feels very inspired by first-time directors of other ones. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
It's as if he has looked at other directors for first time. He's looked at Shaun of the Dead, Evil Dead. He's looked at Brain Dead.
Yeah.
He's looked at maybe a bit of Guillermo del Toro and some of those other foreign ones, and he's taken a lot of that aesthetic of like what were other first-time directors able to pull off with their kind of films.
Yeah.
What kind of style. Because thinking about the fact that, I might be able to do this because they did it on low budget, so I might be able to pull this off with Zoe.
But it does. There's a moment that I think is really cool because so Veranda's kind of having this really handsome man, if anybody didn't catch his name, is having this really kind of extended, drawn out fight with this zombie, and he pushes one of their eyes onto like a bayonet. And then another zombie kind of like comes and grabs him, but he's like ripped his guts out, and then they're hanging over a cliff.
Yeah, this dude goes through some shit.
He goes through some shit.
This guy, like,
which
literally
makes you think, this is the
you think he's going for it. You also think several times you're like, you should be dead.
You should be dead. But the funny thing is that they're all medical.
Because he gets bitten on the neck as well.
Yeah.
When zombies, you think, you're fucked.
Nah, you know that he's not.
Like, because his neck's like sliced up, and he has to use his intestine like literally to pull himself up a cliff.
Yeah, it's all very like over the top in that in that Brain Dead Evil Dead.
And he stitches like the scene's really cool when he's literally just stitching his neck back together and stitching his So he seems very much like you said, the Ash Williams. Like this is the dude that has to put himself back to
he's got to put himself back together literally to do it. But there was one scene that I forgot, and I really liked it this time, and it's when one of the effectively, like I think I've said effectively like 3 or 4 times to summarise.
You're losing the meaning of that word.
I am, and I'm losing all logic.
Effectively, you're fine.
Effectively, I'm cooked. Like I was about to say it again. Now they get the students who are remaining, the 4 ones: Roy Martin and Dreadlock Woman and Blonde Woman. That's what they will be known as.
That's an effective use.
They say like, well, we need to just basically make a run for it. We need to get towards the cars, and it starts them all kind of like running off. The 2 lads are like, we'll make a distraction.
Yeah.
The 2 women, they will go for the cars. And you get this scene where the blonde woman, Liv, I'm reading her name, is knocked out by some of the zombies, and then you get that weird kind of like this weird sunshine red filter as she comes to, and it's like a point of view of her being disemboweled by these zombies. Yeah, and it's really kind of
that was cool.
Yeah, it's quite brutal.
It was really interesting, but a really interesting shot, like to show it like that, to be like, I'm awake, I'm alive. Oh shit!
Yeah, it's just,
what is happening here?
Like you wake up so hopeful, then you're just like, I'm watching myself be disemboweled, and then she
kills us. Yeah,
she stick grenades.
But where you're just like, this is the other thing of just like these weapons that just go, we just have these weapons around. There were once Nazis here, so of course we have a huge selection of weapons that we might be able to use
because they're Nazis.
Yeah,
and
Yeah, because then you've got the whole chase where Hannah gets chased all the way until she's off, like literally gets thrown, like flips off of a cliff.
She climbs up a tree.
Yeah.
And then like a crow is giving her away, so she's like battering the crow against the tree.
But she chooses, like, she could have just silently broken its neck, but instead she just fucking slams it to the point where it's like the two zombies are just like staring at her.
Just watching her do this.
Like, it's just like, oh, did I make too much noise killing that crow?
And that's what I mean. It's quite, those bits are quite like strangely funny.
Yeah,
you know,
like, it's kind of tongue in cheek. Yeah,
it's just a little tongue in cheek, but then
it's a bit absurdist. You're a bit like, it does somewhat play up that kind of like, this is ridiculous, so we're just going to go.
We're just going balls to the wall. Yeah, and it's fun. You know, it's good. She jumps out of the tree with like a stick and just.
Yeah, there is an odd bit of
one.
Yeah, with those, there is an odd bit of a slapstick at times to this kind
of
thing.
Definitely.
The way they play it, like that crow scene, but the scene after she's like come back when we've got like back to Martin and Roy in the house when they literally like are trying to fight off with fire and end up burning. But they're having like a deep conversation while literally the whole place is burning.
Like engulfed in flames.
Fully engulfed. Like literally they are surrounded by fire and yet they're still like, let's not get out of it. No, we're in like we're stuck in this conversation right now.
Yeah.
Like this back and forth kind of thing and you're just there like, okay. Like the idea was to get rid and burn it down and not the way that they've done it kind of thing.
It's good. And then there's a bit where Hannah is then, you know, on like an edge of a cliff, and she tries to commit suicide by like breaking it and taking the zombie with her. She then ends up getting kind of buried under the snow, and you have that great. It's kind of a callback to an earlier scene where they're saying somebody got, you know, was in an avalanche, and then when they found him, he dug like 6 foot deeper, and I think it's the handsome man who basically says like, well, from like military training. Or I'm sure I don't know if that's a weird joke, because I think when it's starting, when you're watching like a foreign language film for the first time, you have to adjust, and especially like a comedy, you have to adjust to the humour. So he's like, remember from your military training, like if you're in an avalanche, you're supposed to spit, and then whichever way it goes.
Well, gravity. He's the one that seems to act quite more seriously than the rest of them. He's almost seems like a bit out of their humour sometimes. When they're like joking in the car at the start, he doesn't quite seem on the same wavelength as the rest of them. He does seem more serious generally,
but
compared to those guys.
You know, like, is he just Norwegian, or you know, I don't know. But this is like a little callback to that, and it did make me think that is fucking wrong. Imagine being in that situation.
Yeah,
being buried under snow and not knowing where you are. And then she sees the snot and she's like, all right, that's the way in which I'm getting out, man. You know, I've got to go opposite. And it's quite a fun scene. She gets up and the zombies kind of like dug itself up as well. And she just boots its head off.
Yeah, well, I mean, she like that, but you know, and for not knowing if she's like alive or dead, but she goes through quite that journey as well, obviously trying to escape them, like trying to make it back. And obviously before, you know, this is somewhat the one of the last before we see the major, like, this all leads to that, like, a big scene where we get a Veigard who arrives as Martin and Roy are basically going across a kind of somewhat hilltop from the cabin, going up there, and this is kind of that big scene that I talked about earlier, that big balls to the wall, show it all off. This is the strong scene. Like, this is the. This
is what I remember the most. But I do remember watching it. I remember the shagging in the outhouse for some reason, and then I remember this scene because this is.
Well, they've got the power tools, haven't they? You know, we've got a chainsaw. Obviously, you've got to have that. Martin's got the chainsaw.
Roy's got a hammer and a sickle, which is great. And there's that scene where like. One of the zombies, he's like on his knees, and Roy runs at him with the hammer and sickle together, and the zombie like looks at it and snarls, and I was like, that's really funny. It's just like a little bit of like that humour.
And this is just, you know, a quite well shot. I think I almost understand why the director from this got some of those kind of. Some of them are over the top action films, and I understand why he got them probably from this scene alone because. They're well shot while also sometimes being a little bit humorous the way that he kind of kills them. You know, them running along and basically heads are just like lopping off. slicing them apart, digging into them. The zombies are coming to attack them, and they're just like taking them piece for piece. They're literally locking them into bits. Then you get Vegard, the handsome man who arrives on his snowmobile when they look like they're a bit more cornered, and has it. He's
got the shoots.
And he's blasting them apart, and he's literally makes his way through them to the fact he thinks he's safe, and they're all kind of like, he manages to they think finish them off, and then he kind of stops for that moment, and they have like a moment of like, well done, we did this.
And some of the kills are great.
They are,
because you get, and this is the brain dead kind of throwback is the use of power tools, and then obviously the chainsaw, very evil dead. But the handsome man Vegard has some like, obviously he like rocks up, and then he's got the M42 on the front, and he guns a whole bunch down.
Yeah,
and then I'm pretty sure he gets
brain like heads that explode, or ones that get sliced in half, and things like that.
And then he puts one he belly to back suplexes one, which is great, and then puts his head under the snowmobile and like grinds his head up, and then another attacks him, and he puts his hand into the engine, and it just gobbles him up completely, and it's great. And you're like, and at this point, and this happened the first time I watched it as well, I was like, that's the fucking man right there, that's it. And then yes, and then like
he is stood there with this kind of almost those two looking up at him like, we were doing okay, but you just fucking
you're the man,
like the man. And then they're like, wait, behind you, and he gets grabbed and pulled back. Yeah, he does get stabbed, but then, a whole horde of them grab him.
Stab him, which is brutal. Yeah. I forgot about that. I forgot that so he gets stabbed, and then like all five
multiple times, because his whole suit that's white goes red.
Completely covered.
And he literally, so you're just stood there watching white, and you think, oh shit, he's just dropping to the ground like he's dead. Yeah. And they still decide to grab him,
and just
lift him up in the air, pull him back, and just tear him apart. All of his limbs, head and all limbs come off. Weirdly, one of the effects that's not as well done as the other ones, though, you can literally almost see where the Velcro seams were in the legs and the arms. It's a little bit like, whereas some of the other ones, I think, although they're obvious, I thought the effects still look pretty like, oh, that looks pretty cool, or pretty kind of somewhat real. Yeah, we know when their heads are flying through the air or they're getting lopped off, you can tell that was like in place like that. That's fine. But this one, I've just found that was only one thing. I was like, it just seems so very clear. You could see. I was like, that's not what the legs would look like. It literally looks
come off like
just like big round black pits where basically they would have held the actual body frame together to pull it apart.
I've seen a man dismembered.
I've seen a man dismembered, and your insides do not look bad.
If you don't
know, dismember your leg now.
Dismember yourself now,
and you'll be able to see that that's not what it looks like.
That's good advice.
We take no responsibility, public liability. We are not suable for any of this. No. If you live in America and you'll sue us for literally anything, get at you again. Yes. We're not liable. No. We didn't tell you to do it. We just advised. It's possible.
We just wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And then Martin accidentally kills Hannah. She in his blood frenzy.
I mean, to be fair, this is absolutely fucking stupid.
Oh, of course.
She has just run across an entire huge goddamn field. He is in the middle of, because there are more zombies coming at them. He's just fighting off. He's in a mad rage. You can see, and I can see from very far away, if I was running up to him, that this dude is in the middle of literally fighting off horde after horde of different guys, different zombies. So her idea is, I'm going to run up right behind him and put my hand on him. What the fuck do you think's going to happen?
It's so stupid.
Dude is going to turn around and slice your hack you in the head in this case. So he could have sliced her apart. He could have done, but there was no way that if you run up to someone who was in the middle of that, if we had someone, if there were civilian casualties in Call of Duty Zombies, if there were people who could run up to you for help, or if you were able to kill the other people that play with you, your friendly fire, you would be killing your friends all the goddamn time. Because you're constantly everywhere. Sometimes you're just blasting everywhere. You just start blasting. That is it. That's the situation. So in no case would you ever, if anyone's in the middle like that, you'd be like, oh shit, yeah. If I just walk up and tap him on the shoulder, he'll understand.
I'll just firmly grab them on the shoulder.
So, I mean, I didn't really feel much of a connection to these anyway. I mean, he'd already tried to kill her once in this film. So I didn't feel much of a connection anyway. But I felt even less for her because I was like, you just went for all that and you fucking stupid.
Yeah.
That was dumb. Like, very sad, you're dying. Roy's makes another stupid joke. I can't remember what they did, but he definitely makes a joke at that point as well. He's still like going at it, but he's more like, we need to go. Yeah,
Herzog turns up. Finally,
yeah,
and it's strange because he's spoken about I wouldn't say quite a lot, to be fair. Actually, he's mentioned in the exposition that the mysterious stranger gives. He's seen at the, he's on the box art, but I'm pretty sure that this is like the first or the second time you actually see him. Like, he doesn't.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, well, around this, I think you see him near the start of this scene when they're sent, because you see them like marching towards the hill or something, like marching towards the area.
But he doesn't.
And then he stands back.
Yeah, he just
I think he stood back. He is kind of just waiting. He lets others do his bidding, kind of thing. He's just
which I get. He's a colonel.
Yeah,
but I kind of feel like maybe we could have had a bit more of him. You know, maybe we get more of him in the sequel. I don't know.
Probably, I would assume so.
I'd hope so. But Herzog arrives with a couple more lads, and then this is they attack and Martin's bitten.
Yeah,
and he has that scene of like where he's freaking out and he's like, I've been bitten, and he's saying like,
this is definitely not only a play on the Evil Dead, but the concept of the whole like, if you're hit by a zombie, you need to slice bits off, and then it's the question of do I?
Well, everyone mentioned like, like whatever you do, don't get bit earlier in the film.
Yeah.
Although I would already be convinced that that's not the case just by knowing the nature of this. So if anybody is interested, obviously it kind of follows that cursed gold thing, but that's from a Scandinavian folklore of Draugr, which I mostly know from Skyrim, I would admit. But they're effectively like undead ghouls who hoard wealth. A little factoid for you. And Martin is like, fuck it, I gotta do it. And he, chainsaws the arm off. And then he, and
then 30 seconds later gets bit on the dick.
Gets bit on the dick, which is great. A zombie.
But I was also a bit like, you cut your arm off because you start to get infected. It's almost like, because he does show a little bit of a reaction, like he's almost starting to get infected.
Well, I think he's just panicking.
Yeah, and it slices through, and then he gets bit. So you're just kind of like, well, if you do get infected, then you're fucked now, aren't you? Because he's bit your dick off.
That's so good. It's so well done.
He gets so, like,
it bursts out
fucked up in this kind of scene.
He looks at Roy, and there's a moment where he's like, I've done it, like, I'm safe. And then this zombie just bursts out and just bites him on the ball bag and the cock. And you're like, and I laughed because I completely forgot about it. Yeah, like, that's just a good bit of.
It was funny. I think my brain also went to the logical. I was like, well, now you're fucked.
Oh yeah, of course. I wouldn't be able to saw my clackers off.
Yeah, there is that point where you're there. Is he gonna slide?
Is he gonna do it?
He's gonna send it down there and go, fuck it, it's gone, or is it already gone? Because we don't know how much has been torn off.
Yeah, we don't know how much is packing.
And then so we get the whole, them trying to fight off Herzog, and then them running away as they're like.
Well, Herzog summons everybody. Yeah. He basically says,
and they're like, fuck,
and then like, I don't know, like maybe 80 more zombies just crawl out of the ground, and you're like, fuck, man, like if. Like, you could take Herzog easy. You could maybe take another couple of lads if he sent them in. If he did like boss style,
Herzog gets Roy, doesn't he? He gets him the hammer and gets picked up.
Yeah.
This just comes out of nowhere as they're running away through the trees and just whacks him straight
bonks him on the side of the head.
Yeah.
His guts are out somehow.
No, he bonks him on the head, and then as he's running, he runs into a tree. He gets caught onto the tree.
Trees can get rid of a lot of guts.
Yeah, it slices through his gut, and then his guts are tangled onto the tree. Yeah, because he keeps like, he hits the trees for a second and bounces off of it like nothing's happened, and then he's like just still running, and then suddenly gets like brought back like he's on a bungee cable, and it's like, what the fuck? And it's like, oh shit, my guts are
my guts
are back there. And then he's like, well, I'm fucked now, aren't I? I'm done. Like, he drops to the ground, and then Martin has the whole chest, doesn't he?
He realises what they're after.
Yeah, I'll give it back to you.
Yeah, and he gives them back, and they fuck off. They're like, all right, I'm off, man. Yeah. We've got our treasure. I would be really annoyed because You stole the treasure, so it's fine for you to steal treasure. But suddenly, when I want to plunder, that's not okay.
Yeah.
Like what?
Are you going to get into the? You're going to get into the fight with the Nazi zombies who are hoarding around you. You're just saying, well,
actually, lads.
Because Nazis are well known for having a good
honor.
either side of the discussion. They are well known for looking at both sides of the argument.
I'd be like, what are you going to spend it on? First of all, lads,
you ain't going to buy yourself no fancy new clothing.
You're just hoarding for the sake of hoarding.
Doesn't matter how much cosmetic you buy, lads. You ain't getting that blonde Hara and that.
You're not getting
that blue eyes. You ain't getting them back.
The Third Reich's done. Mate. You're not getting any. Just cut your losses. Give me something. I would be a bit annoyed at that. Let a man plunder to his heart's content.
And then we get this. It's more of a kind of for a moment. I guess I am okay.
I guess I'm fine. I
get back in the car. Can't really get the car going properly, and then coin in my pocket.
Dropped a coin, and then Herzog's there.
Just
smashes through, and that ends.
And
a coin. Come on, you got to miss a coin.
One goddamn coin.
Spend it on.
You start that again. Are you fucking kidding?
And I mean, look how many lads you've got. You've got like 80, 100 soldiers, and you've got to share a coin. Does one person get to keep it for 3 days, and then he has to give it to another one? Like, how are you all possessing one coin?
I'm not going. There is a quote to be made when you're sat there going, you are very stingy with your money.
Yeah.
I could almost say that you are the people that you went after.
Yeah, I'm
starting to feel that you're not really proper Nazis.
It's a fine line.
There's something here that may put you in a different sort of a stereotype of a different person.
Yeah, but we won't go there. We're not going there.
I was gonna.
We know you won't go there. We're not going there. But I would have argued.
Maybe you should send yourself to a camp. I'm going dark now.
You're going dark. That's it. We're done.
Right. This is so we've talked through the film, kind of the main highlights and stuff like that. So this comes back down to that main question. Now, this, somewhat more independent film, somewhat of a kind of a hit at the time, not a big hit, but it got that and it kind of gained a kind of a cult status.
Yeah.
Which is why I think maybe it's made it onto this list, So again, this is meant to be the top one hit. We're not going to end up with 100 films because we will whittle a lot of them down because, as we said, some of them just maybe never deserve to be on here. Some of them might surprise us. They might be like, oh shit, okay, I wouldn't have put you on the list, but maybe you deserve that place. There are some of them I think have got on there that probably wouldn't be on a lot of people's top 100 list if you looked at other more classical ones.
Yeah.
What have we had? Event Horizon, that's not really
on
the top 100 list. But that split the boys' kind of opinion, so some of us put those in. And I think there's been a few other ones that we've come across where some people probably wouldn't have put them on there, but we've actually thought, yeah, you know what? Actually, it has its credits. It actually deserves to be on there. So, must-see horror. Is Dead Snow deserving of that title?
Nah. Straight off the bat. I mean, for me, I don't think it is. I think it's it's definitely a fun film. I think it wears its influences well. It's got some decent moments of humour. It's got some good level of gore, and it's got some fun to it. It doesn't outstay its welcome, which I'd be interested. I hear that the sequel was also quite well reviewed and was quite well kind of done. And still matches the kind of same level of over the top gore and that kind of stuff. And I'm planning on checking out the sequel.
Yeah,
but I'd be interested to see whether they kept it nice and tight, or whether they were actually, because this one was quite well done. Did they pump some more money into it, and did it get more time, and does it become a bit more bloated? Whereas I feel like this is a good, fun film. I would recommend people watching it because it's something you could easily just fucking take your brain out to and put on, just be like, I've got an hour and a half to kill. I need to watch a fun film that's a bit gory. Put it on, but would I say that it's must see horror? If somebody was like, what are 10 films that you need to see to get into horror? I don't think I'd be like, oh, Dead Snow, mate.
Yeah, I mean, as an a first sort of early film from a director kind of thing and stuff like that, I think I agree. Like, this is my first time watching it. I found it fun. In the same way I would look at anyone, like this. The scenes and stuff were very enjoyable. It's an easy watch. You can have a bit of watch. If you've never seen it, give it a little go. I mean, we've said this is part of our first festive kind of one. I mean, technically, I think only the fact it takes place in a snowy place.
I think
it's not actually a Christmas film.
No, it's not Christmas at all. However,
it has snow.
It does have
and
snow.
To us in Britain, who rarely ever get the snow, or I'm sure in lots of other country states you barely ever see it either. But to us, if there's snow about it, then it just means it's somewhat
Christmas film, of course.
In horror film, when you've got some slim pickings at times, you're like, I'm going to go for just a snowy one. Got snow at Christmas horror.
You're a Christmas horror.
I enjoyed it. It was fun. There are things that that I said that definitely still put it in that camp of like, you can sometimes tell that it is a low horror. It's not one that raises about, which is understandable. But I guess at the same time in my head, if I then take this film and compare it to ones that we've been talking about, ones that this film itself actually looks at, that was a lot of directors' first time horror films. Yeah. If I compare this to Evil Dead as another, possession body horror kind of film, or Shaun of the Dead, or Brain Dead, and I take those films, this film would pale in comparison to, I think, the quality of filmmaking that's happening in those films. Yeah. Although I think some of the action is shot well, I still think this still, and kind of showing what the director went on to following this, he's in that bowl-house of fun, tongue-in-cheek kind of horror, but isn't quite able to raise it to that additional level to make it more than its level of its parts. And also, he also wrote the script and stuff like that, and although it's fine, it's nothing special. No, it's fine. It's fun. It's good. It's well made for a a lowish budget kind of horror of this. But there's a lot of other, say, like foreign horror and stuff like that, where I could say, like of smaller countries, Brain Dead, for instance, was like New Zealand, but Peter Jackson did amazing things with what he could do, for that. And also made more kind of interesting or unusual characters that could kind of be drawn from. The same way, Ash in Evil Dead. They're more interesting characters for this kind of cabin setting, whereas I didn't really drawn to any one of these, especially apart from when they were doing cool actiony stuff. Yeah. And that was cool.
And that's kind of what the film is.
Our handsome man did some very interesting stuff, some fun stuff, and some of the other characters have their moments to do really cool stuff. But as a character themselves, do I care about that person?
No.
Not really. Any of these could have died, didn't give a shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's that kind of thing. And it's not coming down to also that, taking, another kind of zombie horror like Shaun of the Dead, something like that, in that it had interesting characters and interesting death scenes and interesting styles, and it raised the kind of level for it, kind of thing. So it doesn't hit that kind of level. Another film that I would say is a must-see horror, is Shaun of the Dead, something like that, comparing it to those ones. Brain Dead or Evil Dead, I think all of those would fall into that camp. Yeah. But this one just is more of a throwaway kind of fun. It's fun, I'd watch it, I just can't say that I liked it, I didn't love it. Kind of thing.
I agree.
It's in that level. It's like right down the middle for me, kind of as a, I just wouldn't see anyone going, this is, and some people may put it, this is one of those ones where I could see some people doing it because not only has it got fun elements, but also one of those ones when they almost want to throw in a foreign horror just for the sake of throwing in a foreign horror. Yeah. And if you want a good foreign horror, that's made from foreign directors, with zombie films, there's lots of those out there. And some of them that I think would be stronger choice than this. Like Train to Busan. Yeah. Okay? That's one that is a strong aspect.
That's a banging film. I don't even know if that's on the list.
I don't know if that's on our list. It should be. It should be, but that's what I mean. But that's more of a one where if I'm talking about one that's more of a contained, wasn't a mega kind of one. It was still actually within limits, but actually raises its source material. That's not a comedy one. I'm sure there are lots of other kind of more comedy ones that I could have pointed, but my brain's not thinking of any right now.
Straight to Train to Busan.
But still, I'm just more saying like, of the foreign films, and I would say that on our list that we have got, there is some foreign horror films, but there's not a ton of foreign horror. It is very Hollywood or kind of more of the Western system inclined.
Pretty much, yeah.
You know what I mean? So, it's nice to have this choice. It's nice to get an opportunity to visit this, but I just don't think it's quite strong enough to be in that level.
No.
It's worth a watch.
Yeah, I'd say it's worth a watch. And I mean, if you have watched the film, come and let us know what you thought of Dead Snow. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CMTH Podcast. It could be that you think this is fucking banging and this is must-see horror. In which case, come and let us know that. Scream at us. Or you might think, actually, you know what? I kind of agree. It's a bit of a fun film, but it ain't getting into the club. It's not getting an invite. It's not. It's probably invited to go for a couple of drinks during the day, but it's not getting invited on the night out.
You can go to pre-drinks.
You can go to pre-drinks,
or you can go to the prom, but you're not invited to the after party.
Yeah, you ain't going there. And remember to hit that subscribe button and leave us a lovely review. We will see you next week as we cover a festive classic, and this one is actually festive. We make that a promise.
This one has a good start. It starts literally with Christmas, and if you know what that film is, then make sure you get in touch with us.
And we'll see you then. Take care. Bye bye.